Chapter 19, The Distinguished and Aristocrats Only. In the middle of the night, Han Sen placed a bag of dead quartz scorpions and a note at the door of Su Xiaoqiao's room before knocking a few times. Then he hid in an alley close by and made sure Xiaoqiao took the bag and note inside. It turned out to be a nice collaboration, and Han Sen got the 6 million promised by Qin Xian and another 80,000 for the scorpions. He went back to his room with boxes of cash and almost jumped with joy. Even when his father was still alive, he had never seen so much money at once. Han Sen left God's sanctuary with the money, since the only thing he wanted to do right now was to share the joy with his mother and sister. Their adversity had finally ended. The 2 million he earned before was all used on solving the issue of the old house, and he could eventually have the 6 million to himself, which was a totally different feeling. Although the money was not even enough for the rich to buy a luxury airplane, for Han Sen it was already the most money he had seen in his life. "Mom, Yan, I have something to show you." Han Sen pulled them into his room and poured the cash onto his bed. "Where did you get so much money?" Luo Sulan was first frightened instead of being surprised, fearing that her son might have done something dangerous. "Mom, I was lucky to have killed a mutant creature and gained the beast's soul, so I traded it for this money." Han Sen did not dare to tell the truth, afraid that Luo Sulan might get worried. He didn't dare to leak anything about the black crystal, as the precious stone may land its innocent possessor in jail. His whole family could be wiped out if word got out. Luo Sulan said ruefully, "Sen, you should not have sold it. It could be of great help to you, and we could always get by." "Mom, no worries. I will have another chance. I've eaten the mutant flesh and gained mutant geno points. In the future, it'll be much easier for me to hunt, and everything will get better." But Luo Sulan still felt bad, as it was not that easy to kill a mutant creature. For ordinary people, it would be great luck to hunt one, just like winning the lottery, so there may never be a second time. "Yan is about to start school, and I'm not letting her to go to a public one like I did," Han Sen said. Luo Sulan looked at her children with tears in her eyes. "It's all my fault. I didn't take good care of you. Mom, you are a great woman, and you were the one who raised us. Let me contribute a little as well." Han Sen picked up Han Yan. "Yan, let's go out to eat. You can have whatever you want today." Han Yan's face lit up. "I want to eat sapphire ice cream." "Sure, let's go have sapphire ice cream." Han Sen pinched Han Yan's small nose. "Sapphire ice cream is too expensive. You don't need to splurge with the money. Save it to buy some meat. Just once." Han Sen went out, holding Luo Sulan's hand. "Don't tell others you have hunted a mutant creature or you sold a mutant beast soul. I don't want anything bad to happen to you," Luo Sulan urged her son. Since Han Sen's father had the accident, Luo Sulan had changed. She no longer wanted Han Sen to be in charge, but just to be safe. "Mom, relax. I will not say a thing. You keep the money and decide what to do with it." Han Sen went out of the house holding his sister with one hand and his mother with the other. Sapphire ice cream was famous throughout the alliance and was also very expensive. Even the cheapest type cost more than 10,000. Their neighbors' kids were always having sapphire ice cream. And Han Sen also had tried it a few times when he was younger. However, when Han Yan was born, they were already bankrupt, so they couldn't afford such luxuries anymore. Having the impression that the ice cream was delicious, Han Sen could no longer remember what it tasted like. When the three came to Sapphire, all the seats were taken, and there was a long line to buy ice cream. "Let's go upstairs." Before Han Sen entered the store, he saw through the window that the second floor was almost empty, so he thought the ladies could go upstairs and have a seat while he would stand in line alone. At the stairs, he was stopped by a waiter. "I am sorry, you cannot go up," the waiter said. "Why? Aren't there any seats upstairs?" Han Sen frowned. Contemptuous and impatient, the waiter pointed to a notice on the wall. You should have heard about our rule even if you have never had our ice cream before. Han Sen looked at the notice, which said, the distinguished and aristocrats only, and understood what he was referring to. So the second floor was an area exclusively for people with privileges, and ordinary people weren't even allowed to enter. No wonder the second floor had much better decorations yet was so empty. We don't need to sit down. We'll just wait here, and you go get yen ice cream, said Luo Sulan, trying to spare Han Sen. I'm going. Han Sen smiled and went to the back of the line. He seemed to be indifferent, but was suddenly possessed by an aspiration. What's so special about the distinguished and aristocrats? Soon I shall have it all and more. The stupid notice will never get in my way again. There still were no empty seats when it was his turn to buy the ice cream, so Han Sen had to order takeout. Before leaving, he took another look at the notice, the distinguished and aristocrats only. Chapter 20, Her. The next morning, Han Sen was on the train going to the teleport station, with many passengers sharing his destination. Most people could not afford a teleport device, so they had to enter God's sanctuary using a public teleport station. Today, the conductor seemed to be in a bad mood. While Han Sen was deep in thought about what to do in God's sanctuary, a violent shake of the train left everyone who was standing falling to the sides. Since he wasn't paying attention, Han Sen also involuntarily staggered a few steps forward and fell on something soft. Subconsciously wanting to see something to regain his balance, he felt strange because what he was holding on to was even more soft and tender. Then he found that he had bumped into a woman in military uniform, and his hands were on her chest. Bastard! The woman scowled and elbowed him fast and hard. If she were to succeed, Han Sen would have lost half his face. He subconsciously raised an arm to block the hit, felt a strong hit on his arm and involuntarily stepped back several steps. The woman turned around and viciously stared at Han Senator. She exclaimed with just one look, "You ass! Qin Xian!" She didn't finish her sentence, but Han Sen cried in fear. This woman in uniform happened to be the woman from whom he had gotten the nickname as Freak. Han Sen did not expect Qin Xian also to be on Roka planet, and it seemed that she had enlisted in the army. Being in the military was nothing uncommon in the Alliance, as all legitimate residents of the Alliance needed to serve at least 5 years when they turned 20. When Han Sen turned 20, he would also become a soldier, if there were no special reason for him not to serve. Qin Xian recognized Han Sen, but didn't initiate a fight. She just looked at him with a cold and slightly disgusted look. Han Sen thought ruefully, she must think I'm a pervert now. I don't even blame her. I did stab her in the bottom and now. If I were her, I'd assume the same. There are so many planets in the Alliance, how is Qin Xian here as well? And what are the chances that I would meet her and did this to her? Han Sen thought plaintively. There was no way around it, he would have to let the situation play itself out. In the Alliance, wounding others was not allowed. Qin Xian did not want to make a scene, so she just glowered at him and didn't move further. Han Sen had goosebumps from her staring and immediately got off the train once he reached the teleport station. To his surprise, Qin Xian followed behind him. Dogs can't help from eating sh*t. I thought you were just innocent, while you are by nature a disgusting person, Qin Xian said fiercely. You saw what happened. It was the train, and so many others also fell. It was just a coincidence, Han Sen said with a wry smile. Would you believe that if you were me? Qin Xian said coldly. What do you want? Qin Xian had identified him as a bastard, so there was no need to explain. You really are brazen, showing no remorse for what you did. It must not be the first time you have done something like this. Seeing that Han Sen wasn't going to apologize, Qin Xian raged, You think I'll just send you to the police? It's not that easy. I can't beat you up here, but in God's sanctuary, it will be a different story. You are going there, right? I'll wait for you. Qin Xian immediately left and the soldiers saluted her. Good morning, station master. Han Sen stumbled and couldn't believe what he saw. He almost wanted to cry. All teleport stations belonged to the military system. A garrison was assigned to each station, and the station master was the garrison's chief executive. Han Sen had heard that the old station master was to be transferred, and he couldn't believe that Qin Xian would be the new station master, not even in his wildest dreams. Han Sen had a bad feeling about the whole thing. As the station master, Qin Xian would know his whereabouts very well. And it wasn't even possible for him to use a different teleport station. There are 3 public teleport stations on planet Roka, but the other 2 were too far away, and he couldn't waste 2 days on traveling. Han Sen entered God's sanctuary when Qin Xian went to her office. He decided to wait until she left the shelter before he teleported back home. Han Sen gave Qin Xian no chance to intercept him. Taking some meat jerky made from the mutant scorpion, Han Sen left steel armor shelter. Did I use up my luck when I found the black crystal? Han Sen thought, depressed. He did not go far before seeing Son of Heaven and his gang standing outside the shelter chatting. Han Sen wasn't interested in meeting up with them and went the other way. However, Luo Tianyang called him from behind, "Ass freak, come here." Reluctantly, Han Sen had to turn around toward Luo Tianyang, perplexed. "I'm calling you. Come here and you'll get lucky." Luo Tianyang waved to him, smiling maliciously. "There is no need. I'm not strong. I can only deal with ordinary creatures and can't even fight primitive creatures. I am afraid I cannot help you." Han Sen knew it was never good when Luo Tianyang called him. "Cut the crap. Do you want a beating? I said come." Luo Tianyang gazed at Han Sen with his face dark. Chapter 21, Underground River. In addition to Han Sen, Son of Heaven and his gang were also joined by a few thugs they paid to come along. The group left steel armor shelter and marched into the mountains. Although they expected nothing good to happen, they still wanted to take the chance for the sake of the generous reward. In the past, if Han Sen had not been blocked by Qin Xian and Son of Heaven, he might also have risked his life for the bounty. Now Han Sen had no reason to take such risks, but it was clear that Son of Heaven and Luo Tianyang wanted to use him as a stepping stone, which made him want to kill them both. Han Sen quietly followed them, guessing what they were about to do. When recruiting people, the gang had said they were hunting a mutant creature, and it was only because there were also many ordinary and primitive creatures that they needed more hands. Han Sen of course couldn't take this seriously. To kill a mutant creature, the regular gang was more than enough. The dozen people around Son of Heaven could all kill a mutant creature on their own, let alone Son of Heaven himself. The extra hands were completely unnecessary, according to their story. Luo Tianyang and others casually killed the creatures they encountered along the way, and gave the meat to the hired people casually, which made everyone quite happy. The group had been going for 6 or 7 days, and the gang still had no intention of stopping. On the 8th day, they halted at a mountain pass. Very far from the shelter, there was no human activity. They encountered many different creatures. Son of Heaven and his gang had killed a lot of primitive animals on the way and kept some of the flesh as food. It seems that we are almost there. What on earth are they up to? Han Sen had not heard anything, but judging from the grave look on their faces, this couldn't be a simple operation. They rested for a day at the campsite and crossed the mountain pass the next morning. After hiking a dozen miles, they saw a gap in the canyon so deep and dark that no one could see the bottom. Everyone lit a torch. The gang sent the hired people as the vanguard and followed them into the gap. The hired ones all knew it was time to put their life on the line, so they were dawdling. "Why are you going so slowly, bitches? Do you still want the rest of the money?" Luo Tianyang whipped a few people in the back and shouted. The thugs could only speed up going down. Han Sen was among them. It was not too difficult to walk down, and nothing happened along the way until they reached the bottom. The thugs were relieved and started to talk and laugh again. It was very dark at the bottom of the gap, and the group had to rely on the torches. There was an underground river running through the huge space. Cross the river and go into the cave on the other side. Luo Tianyang pointed his whip to the other side. Luo, I cannot swim. This river is too wide, said a young man who had been recruited. Who told you to swim? We have inflatable boats. Just row across. Luo Tianyang opened the parcel on the back of his mount, and there were indeed inflatable boats in there. After they inflated the boats, each one could sit 4 to 5 people. The group started to row the boats across. The speed of the water was not fast, and there was no risk of being rushed downstream. 2 boats soon reached the center of the river. All of a sudden, with a splash, a dark creature emerged from the water with half of its python-like body exposed. Its body was wider than a bucket and covered with shiny black fine scales. Its mouth was so large that it could fit a cow. But it wasn't a cow that was swallowed, rather someone on the boat. The giant body then put its full weight on the boat, which exploded with everyone on it falling into the water. Everyone was shocked and trying to row the boats back. Those who hadn't gone on the boat just dropped their boat and started to run back. With a glint of cold steel, the 2 running the fastest were beheaded by Luo Tianyang and another gang member. Luo Tianyang pointed the knife with blood on it at the rest and cried ruthlessly, "There is but one monster, so whoever reaches the other side can live. And I'll kill anyone who took the money and tries to run away. To live or to die, it is up to you." Everyone was intimidated by Luo Tianyang's vicious act and started to row towards the other side. "Assholes, you just want to feed the monster with humans," Han Sen cursed in his heart. Those who fell into the water before were trying to swim to the other side but were suddenly pulled into the water by something. It was so dark that no one saw what happened to them, but their fate could be imagined from the thick scent of blood. The hired boys dared not move forward, and Luo Tianyang used his knife again to force them. They didn't want to stay in the river, so they had to row hard. Han Sen lit the surroundings with his torch while rowing the boat. In case the monster came out of the water, he had to summon Sacred Blood Beast's soul armor at once to save his life. The monster again collapsed a boat, and everyone on it was screaming. Then what could be heard was only the waves rolling. "Row harder if you want to live." Han Sen yelled at the 2 on the boat with him who were petrified as he was rowing his heart out. #King Heartless Bastards. He swore quietly. The 2 men were revived by Han Sen's shout, and started to row desperately. From time to time there were screams and splashes. Countless men must have been buried in the snake belly. Chapter 22, Broken Egg. There was no doubt that this giant snake was a sacred blood creature. Aquatic creatures were hard enough to kill, let alone a sacred blood creature. With his normal gang, Son of Heaven didn't even dare to hunt it, but was only trying to fill out the group, so that they could safely reach the other side. Han Sen took a look at the other side as he was rowing. After they passed the middle of the river, the torch could light up the other side a little bit. Since Han Sen had started to practice jade skin, his body function seemed to get a lot better. Vision was also a lot stronger than before, and he seemed to have gained night vision as well. Now he could clearly see a cave 6 to 9 feet wide on a cliff. Although there was no path, the cave must have been the gang's destination. Han Sen was looking at the cave when he heard a loud splash. His heart sank as he saw the giant snake popping out of water less than 6 feet from their boat, its mouth moving towards the boat and its fangs showing. Without thinking, Han Sen jumped into the water and summoned his armor underwater. Like a fish, he struggled to swim across the river. The whole process of crossing the river was tragic. It wasn't clear whether the black snake was insatiable or just determined to kill humans, but only 2 boats reached the other side, and only 7 people lived. All the others were in the water and most likely dead. The snake didn't show up again. Son of Heaven, although the snake was a sacred blood creature, it was not intelligent. Now it is full, we should not have too much risk crossing, said Luo Tianyang, smiling. Go over. Son of Heaven gave the order, and the gang went over in 3 boats. As expected, the snake didn't attack anymore and they all landed safely. Continue. Luo Tianyang whipped the 7 survivors, who were forced to walk inside the cave, trembling. They regretted so much that they had coveted the bounty. What was money good for if they died here? But they did not encounter any other creatures along the way. In half an hour, they reached the end of the cave. At the end of the cave there was a pool, and next to the pool was a gravel nest 30 feet wide. In the middle of the nest there lay 2 eggs the size of ostrich eggs with black patterns. Son of Heaven was overjoyed. Ha, awesome! Eggs of sacred blood creatures, and there are 2 of them. Now my sacred Geno points could go over 80. Even so, he did not lose his caution and winked at Luo Tianyang, who was equally excited. The latter understood immediately and forced the survivors to fetch the eggs. Trembling, they walked into the gravel nest and carried out the 2 eggs. However, before they were able to leave the nest, the pool started to bubble, and bang! A huge snake head stuck out, the dark red snake eyes staring at the egg thieves. Damn! Throw the eggs over, Son of Heaven shouted to them, but they were dumbfounded by the snake up close and did not reply him. Useless motherf asterisk hashtag curs. Son of Heaven scolded and summoned his red sword, running forward. The gang all summoned their weapons and followed him. Rushing in front of the survivors, Son of Heaven grabbed the eggs and ran towards the mouth of the cave. The snake was originally concerned about its eggs and didn't move. Seeing Son of Heaven running away with them, it went into a rage and left the pool, chasing the gang madly. Block it, cried Son of Heaven, while he kept running without pause. Luo Tianyang was even more ruthless. He grabbed 2 shivering survivors and threw them at the snake. Catching one in the mouth, the snake swallowed him without chewing. The rest of the gang all followed suit, using the survivors as human shields, which temporarily resisted the snake's attack. They took advantage of it and retreated. Son of Heaven ran fast, holding the 2 snake eggs. It took him no time to arrive at the mouth of the cave. When he was excited, a golden fist appeared in front of him and hit him on the face. He hadn't expected someone hiding behind the cave mouth and was unprepared for the attack. Blood spilling and nose crooked, he fell back with his hand covering his face. The 2 snake eggs suddenly flew out from his arms. A golden figure jumped up, caught 1 egg with each hand, and ran toward the river. $. Son of Heaven fell to the ground, clutching his face. He immediately managed to climb up, saw the unique golden armor and recognized who it was. After jumping in the water, Hansen had swiftly swum to the shore in the chaos, and instead of going into the cave, he hid behind a boulder and waited until the gang entered the cave. He then followed them and watched. When he saw Son of Heaven running with the eggs, Hansen gave him a hard punch and captured the eggs. Hansen just regretted that his bronze crescent spear had been ruined by Shui Longyan, or he might have been able to kill Son of Heaven with this secret attack. Hansen reached the river and suddenly saw waves roaring. A huge black-scaled snake appeared from the river. #K. There is another one? Hansen looked back and saw the other snake chasing the gang. You are so #Ked. Son of Heaven hated Dollar's guts and gloated that he was stopped by the snake. Hansen quickly had an idea as the snake in the river glared at him. He pushed hard with his right hand secretly, and then threw the snake egg at Son of Heaven. Catch! We will each keep one egg, and let's deal with the snakes together first." "Who agreed to that?" "I will get both eggs and kill you." Thinking Han Sen was terrified, Son of Heaven sneered and caught the egg, but the egg broke when it hit him and the egg was all over him. Son of Heaven was stunned. Chapter 23, Obsidian Dragon. Roar! The giant snake shrieked and rushed madly towards Son of Heaven, who was covered in egg, leaving Han Sen alone. Han Sen turned and ran with the remaining snake egg. Jumping on an inflatable boat, he desperately rowed to the other side without looking back. He still had an egg with him, and if both snakes decided to go for him, it would be no fun at all. $F***KYOR, Han Sen heard cursing from behind, followed by all sorts of human voices and the beast's roar. Han Sen went to the other side, jumped onto the shore and ran out of the big gap. Without a pause, he ran toward the shelter. After running for a while, Han Sen started to get uneasy. In case Son of Heaven and his gang escaped, they would definitely go for him, and he could by no means outrun their mounts. Han Sen decided to go into the forest and take a detour so that he didn't risk being caught by them. They had been in the shelter for years, and everyone was fit and had plenty of beast souls. Even though they were no match for the snakes, surely some of them could get away. It was best to be careful. That night, Han Sen found a corner to take shelter from the wind and got some firewood. Sealing the snake egg with a layer of mud, he put it on the fire and barbecued it. While cooking, Han Sen murmured, "Pure life, before you see this dirty world, let me handle the sin and send you back to heaven." Young obsidian dragon killed. No beast soul gained. Eat it to gain 0 to 10 sacred Geno points randomly. Having barbecued it for a while, Han Sen heard the voice. "So it was not a snake, unfortunately I didn't gain the beast soul," Han Sen thought greedily. Soon the egg was cooked and Han Sen used a stick to get the egg out of the fire. Breaking the burnt mud crust on the outside, he saw the delicious egg white. Han Sen took a bite, and the egg was so much better than a chicken egg. Young obsidian dragon eaten. 1 sacred Geno point gained. Han Sen ate the whole egg and was so full he couldn't move. He had gained 5 sacred Geno points. Adding the 8 points he already had, Han Sen now had 13 sacred Geno points. It took Han Sen 8 or 9 days to reach Steel Armor Shelter. Son of Heaven and his gang had been back for 2 days already when he arrived. There were only 8 in the gang that returned alive, and everyone was injured. Even some of Son of Heaven's henchmen had died. Son of Heaven wouldn't say what they had done, and Qin Xian and Fist Guy failed to find out. Several hired thugs, however, had come back alive after they had fallen into the water. And through them, Qin Xian and Fist Guy eventually learned what had happened. They still had no idea what had happened after the hired men fell into the water, so just took for granted that the gang was hurt by the obsidian dragons. Their guess was only half right, because the egg thrown by Han Sen also contributed a lot to the gang's predicament. After all, they wouldn't have had to fight the dragons if he hadn't done that. Son of Heaven was afraid of being ridiculed, and did not tell what happened later, while secretly he launched a new search for $. It is a pity that Son of Heaven and Luo Tianyang didn't die. Han Sen learned what had happened and felt relieved. He was afraid that Son of Heaven might suspect something, seeing he had returned alone. Now that there were other survivors, Han Sen naturally had nothing to worry about, and caught a primitive copper-toothed beast on his way back to the shelter. If Son of Heaven and his gang came to interrogate him, he could just say he was rushed downstream and got lucky. Han Sen was thinking too much, because Son of Heaven did not have the time to ask him and didn't make the connection at all. More than half a month was spent on the expedition. Han Sen teleported out of God's sanctuary to see his mother and sister. However, at the gate of the transport station, Qin Xian was standing at the exit, looking at him coldly. "You sure can hide. It's been more than half a month since I saw you." Do you think I'll spare you from the punishment you deserve? Miss Qin, what do you want? Han Sen looked at her, depressed. Qin Xian was now the station master, and there was no way to bypass her. Easy, take this and come with me. Qin Xian threw a combat suit at Han Sen. You would not kill me anyway, Han Sen thought, taking the combat suit and following her back to the station. They didn't teleport to God's sanctuary but to the combat room in the station. Han Sen put on the combat suit and entered the room, where Qin Xian stood in a red combat suit with black stripes. A combat suit was not just clothing, but a high-tech product that could function as armor, with inbuilt sensors which recorded all data during fighting, including heart rate, breathing, punch speed, and the impact taken. This allowed the users to understand their physical status and determine their future practice methods. If you win, I will leave you alone for good. Qin Xian curled her finger, indicating Han Sen should attack. You are about to max out on sacred Geno points and have so many beast souls. I just graduated, and you have trained in the army for so long. Why don't you just say you want to kill me? Even if Han Sen could win, he didn't want to expose the fact that he was dollar. And he wasn't confident about the fight. No beast soul allowed. And we are clear if you can still stand after 50 movements, Qin Xian said casually. Deal. Han Sen believed he could endure 50 movements if he focused on defense.